thank you and welcome to the show for today. You are watching Perspectives, and I am host Alana McLaughlin. This morning on the show, I have an artist here named Epifany to discuss her background, education, her literary arts, her artistic ability, and the impact that she seeks to leave on our local community. And Epifany, I want to thank you for joining me this morning. This is by the grace of God. Us meeting, and the world will never know what we went through to get here, but it is by the grace of God that you are here, and I want to thank you for coming on here. And so let's just get right into it.
Okay.
First segment, baby Epifany years. Tell me where you're from, outline kind of what childhood looked like.
Well, first, thank you for having me. And I am from a small town called Batesville, Mississippi. I was born there. I was raised, however, in North Carolina with my godparents. And let's see, baby Epifany, I was always into arts and crafts. And one thing, my mom always kept me busy with like little books, like little, I've always been into mystery and puzzles and things like that. And I love nursery rhymes. So my mom would always buy me these little rhyming books, and I would always read them. And I just became fascinated with words. And that's what like highlighted, you know, my journey into discovering words and wanting to develop more with that.
Oh my goodness. So now tell me, how did you like English class as a kid in school? How was English? Was that something that you excelled in?
Actually, yes. I started out, I was in merit, and then I advanced to honors English. And I had a teacher, actually, Miss Hale, that knew I loved reading and I loved writing. And then by the time I was in high school, and I was in AP English, and I studied literary arts, and I started learning about, of course, they was teaching us about stuff like Shakespeare and things like that of that nature, and so I became fascinated with it.
Now, in that same era, did you see a lot of black poets or black authors, black writers in that childhood when you were kind of discovering that love?
When we first started, I think the first black author that we read about was Langston Hughes. And then from there, I started discovering, okay, Maya Angelou, of course, we learned about her, and I was fascinated with her. She was one of my inspirations, and so was Langston. And then because I had a love for writing, I also discovered Zora Neale Hurston. And so she's also one of my inspirations to this day as well.
So, but mainly in school, though, I'm hearing a lot of it was just, I mean, those are the classics, too. But in your community, were you seeing anybody else within your age range?
No.
Right?
Not at all. Not at all.
And now take me past high school, like after high school, and especially in reference to literary arts. Tell me how you continue to develop your art after high school. And that's kind of how we'll end this first segment, but just take me through kind of early adulthood. Well, late adolescence to early adulthood.
Okay, so I'll say starting out in college, because college was one of my breakthroughs. I wrote, I had a paper that I had to write, and so I wanted to be different and stand out. And so, and I had talked to my professor, and I was like, I know this is supposed to be in, you know, MLA and AP format, but I was like, my mind was always different in that perspective. And I wanted to include poetry in it. I was the first person that had ever done anything like that, and the paper was about what I saw myself becoming. So I couldn't write a paper and not, you know, write what I saw myself becoming and not include the poet part of me. And so that actual poem landed, he submitted, and it ended up in an anthology.
Wow.
And yes, I got submitted, and then so I used to give references to it, and from there, that's where things started flourishing. And so outside of college, I started, okay, let me develop into this more and see where it takes me. So I started now attending some of the open mics. I learned in college, I didn't even know they had those, right? So I and my friends were like, we're gonna go party and stuff like that.
We're gonna go kick it.
Gonna go kick it. But I'm like, I wanna go to this open mic. And so I started just going to the open mic scenes, and I started seeing more and more people that looked like me, that were, and I was like, this is so awesome, and things of that nature. And I was like, okay, I can do this, or I want to do it. But back then, I wasn't as confident.
And in our second segment, we're going to pick back up on building that confidence, finding those spaces that are comfortable for you as an artist, the impact that you've had on the local community, the things that you have planned, and all the awesomeness that Epifany does. And I encourage our viewers to tune into the second segment of Perspectives, where Epifany and I will be discussing literary arts in Tennessee.
The National Desk, a network of nearly 4,000 local journalists.
To the second segment of the show for today. For viewers just tuning in, I am host Alana McLaughlin. You are watching Perspectives. This morning on the show, I have an artist here, Epifany, here to discuss her background, her education, her career, the impact that she's had on literary arts here in Tennessee, and ultimately her mission behind her work. In our first segment, we talked about her background. We talked about experiences in college, discovering open mics and discovering spaces for literary artists who may not look like the norm, spaces for literary artists of color, minority literary artists, and ultimately just finding those comfortable spaces as an early budding artist. And we're just gonna pick right back up where we just left off. You're discovering these open mics and you're kind of getting a feel for the scene.
Yes.
And so tell me again, just going onwards in that path, some of the things that you saw on those early kind of steps in your career.
Okay. So when I started going to the open mics, as I stated, I started seeing more and more young people that look like myself, older generations, and I would just listen. I wasn't yet confident at all. I just was in awe, that this was even a thing, The closest that I had seen to representation like myself was when I would used to watch Def Poetry Jam coming up as a little girl. And Mos Def was the host, and I would watch that show, and I would watch all the artists that you will see today and celebrities got their start on that stage, and I would always dream of being that person that would hit that stage. And so to go somewhere else and to find another platform that represented people of color such as myself, and they're being so open and free, and I mean, they were amazing and talented people. I was always just in the background just watching like, okay, I'm gonna do that.
One day.
One of these days, I'm gonna be like that. I can do that. And so I just kept writing. It inspired me to keep writing and to keep going. And then so once I left school and was done with college, I moved back. I moved back to Mississippi, and I started like, okay, I have this love of writing. What am I going to do with it? And so from there, I ended up going actually to North Carolina back with my godparents, and I started at Blue Flame Cafe in North Carolina. And the host would start out with everyone doing these improv at the beginning of it to make everyone comfortable. Everybody had to spit a line. And because again, I was still nervous. I was like, no, I'm not ready. I still have my notebook. I would read out, I'm reading out my notebook at this time. So, and working, and my nerves were still flourishing, and I was just still doing stuff. So by the time that I started getting comfortable, I ended up moving back to Mississippi, and then I started going to a cafe, Martinette's. That's where I started honing my craft, and I started getting way more confident, and the community there embraced me and started helping me work out my kinks and telling me how amazing and dope of an artist I was. I would hear it, I didn't feel it yet, but being there, I started just working at it. I started working on my performance, and that led into my career starting, and people giving me platforms to start performing on. And it went from there. My nerves were through the roof by the time I did my first show.
Now tell me kind of what a poetry show looks like. Now, because I know a lot of our viewers are like, wow, they do shows? I know they're over here just like, what? and it's good. That's exactly why I have you right here. Kind of line to me, what does that look like? Is it similar to like a spoken word?
Yes.
You tell me what it looks like.
So for most of us that do performance poetry, we are known as spoken word artists. And so when you're doing an actual poetry event or an actual show, The difference between a show and an actual open mic is that you're gonna have a featured artist. You're gonna, or you may have several featured artists that are already established in the game. And so you will have a host that introduce you, and so you get to do you. And you welcome people into your world of poetry. So therefore, where you go to an open mic, you just have someone standing at a mic or they're just doing stuff for the first time. No, on an actual show, you have more established poets who know what they're doing and they're just giving you full of energy. And everybody is spitting their pieces.
OMG. So with the like moving through the crowd,
Yes.
these performances, and we're going to break that down to performance poetry, because I know you mentioned to me, you were like, in the future, I plan to be a black Tyler Perry. And I was like, I know that's right. Or a black female Tyler Perry.
Yes.
And I was like, yes. And so I started really researching, and I was like, oh my God, you actually are. And a lot of people fail to remember Tyler started with the plays, and arguably the plays are better than the movies.
Yes.
And I think that honestly, black playwrights are a lost art.
Yes.
Especially in this day and age. And so tell me, about creating performance poetry.
So my first breakout was where I created a show called Black Chick Monologue. And the idea was I wanted to create something where black women, we could negate the negative stereotypes that was placed upon us about how, we can't get along or we're always talking about each other. So what I did was I started a promo video, and I had other artists, and I do these with poets, and we did a promo vid and where I wanted it to showcase like, okay, we're all talking about each other, certain things that we're saying, little fun shade type things, like the Real Housewives. We did fun shade. And so when we actually did the show, Black Chick Monologue, we just started running down the different stereotypes placed on black women, like bougie. My character was bougie chick. And we had like the bag lady and things like that. So we started from a reference point of humble beginnings. Like, we told the story of how she got there, because the question that society never asks is, if you encounter someone that seems a certain type of way, there's never anyone there to ask the questions of, how did you get there? So I wanted to tell the story behind that, of showing how that person may have gotten to be the way that they are. And so we told that story and ended it on a positive. Everything that I do will always end with a positive message surrounding it. So we'll start out one way and we end on a positive note. And so when I did that, it got so many rave reviews. So I went on to do the male version called Menace to Society.
Ooh.
And then I went from there, and I just was like, okay, how much more creative can I get? And I said, okay, Tyler Perry does plays, and we know some do Christian plays and stuff like that. So I developed mini plays, and they're called playatries.
And in our third set, we're going to pick right back up on the playatries, on the upcoming poetry retreat that you have, that you're planning, and really all the ways that we can support you and the art that you do. And I encourage our viewers to tune into the final segment of Perspectives, where Epifany and I will be discussing literary arts in Tennessee. Welcome to the final segment of the show for today. If you are just tuning in, I am host Alana McLaughlin, and you are watching Perspectives. This morning on the show, I have Epifany here discussing her background, her education, the impact that she's had on Tennessee and around surrounding states through her poetry, through literary arts, and ultimately, we're just talking about the ways that we can connect with this awesome individual, in ways that we can actually bring her work home and understand some of the meaning behind her work, in ways that we can support literary arts in Tennessee. Ebony, we're picking right back. I didn't mean to say Ebony. We're picking right back up. That's another guess in my head that also does something similar. We're picking right back up Epifany on where we just left off at in our second segment. We were just talking about those kind of first performances. And we talked about the art of performance poetry as opposed to just a spoken word or like an open mic kind of more structured, arguably more boring kind of event. And we just talked about just the cool things that you're doing now. I want to get into these papers that are in your hand. I see that you have two different events. Which one should we start with?
We'll start with the playatry.
Okay. Now tell me, I've never heard of a playetry. Tell me all about it.
Okay. Well, as you see on my shirt, Poem Z. That is the playetry are many poetic plays that I started coming up with. I was influenced by Tyler Perry and of course Oprah Winfrey. So those are some of my influences. So I wanted to do something different and give a different meaning to poetry and show the community how poetry evolves, right? You don't just have to go to an open mic. There are other ways to enjoy poetry, right? So I created many plays called the Playetries. So it encompasses monologues and poetry format. And I cater to mostly poets because I want to give artists a different voice. And some artists like to push their pen and to push their creativity. So these are some of the ways that I can do that and help them break out, you know, also as an artist, so that they can say, oh, I've written for a play before now, and they can get that experience because some of them want to act as well.
Yeah.
So that was one of my biggest things. And I thought to myself, okay, I can be in the background. I enjoy writing and creating more. So I'm like, let's start there. So with Poem Z, this is actually a fun spoof off of TMZ.
I like that.
And we know that with TMZ, they do the, they catch celebrities and stuff and scandals, so to speak.
Yeah.
So this is a fun way of catching poets in scandals. So everybody's get caught doing something, whether somebody's out cheating or somebody is, let's say, in poetry where somebody's repeating somebody else's poem and not giving credit, so plagiarizing or whatnot. So, and we also had one that was like a poet that's a breakout star poet in the community, but he doesn't get paid that much, so he gets caught stealing.
I love it. I love it. And it's real.
It's real. It's real. So I like using some of the depictions that I see from TV and use it also in poetry because, again, yes, we can have fun and play off those, and it's just a different way for people to see that poetry is highlighted and how it's done. And like I stated before, with my shows, everything has a message. Everything is built and turned around into a positive thing. So we don't end on anything negative. We don't stay there. I always want people to leave feeling good, and I always want them to leave with a message behind it. So it's Poem Z, the Playetry, and this play actually is going to be May 18th.
Whereabouts?
This is going to be May 18th at Venue 109. That is in Madison, the Rivergate area across from the mall. We will be there. We were going to have food. We will have drinks. It is 18 and older, you know, type event. You can actually get tickets online on my website, www.epifanies.com. And Epifany is E-P-I-F-A-N-Y, and Imagination, instead of an I, is spelled with an E.
And I love that. I saw you pop up in my email. I was like, ooh, it's spelling like this. But it's those little things that catch people's eye. And it did immediately. I got like 5 emails at once, but yours stuck out. So I'm like, ooh, Imagination. I'm like, she has something going on. I want to see this one first.
Yes.
And now tell me about the next event that you have going up, Rhymes and Rendezvous.
Yes, so this is Rhymes and Rendezvous. This is the Poets and Friends Co-ed Retreat. This is going to be in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. The first retreat I did was an all-female poetry retreat, and that was in January of this year. We went also to Gatlinburg, but that was like for winter. So, and we had a really good time there. And so the feedback was, oh, you should do more. So I said, okay, let's do it. And this time the guys were like, well, there's no men here. Can you do it with the guys? So I said, this would be for all of us. So this is a co-ed retreat, so it's with female and male poets alike. And also I decided to add friends, which are the supporters, because this was a way to invite the community in with us and to also get to have fun with us, to see how we do things. They can participate in poetry workshops that we will have, and they get to know more about us as poets, and it's more intimate. So they get to hang out with us. They can be a poet for a day with us and do things. And, you know, it's just a way for us, you know, just to all come together community-wise and just have some fun.
And now for the young poets that are watching this saying like, oh, I need this experience, I want to know kind of what a poetry workshop looks like.
Okay.
What does that encompass?
So this poetry workshop is actually going to be led by one of my artists because I'm also an entertainment manager.
Wow.
So, yes.
I love you. Oh my God.
Yeah, so I have two artists. One of them is Black Noise, so he's coming out of Milwaukee. He will be leading the poetry workshop, and basically what goes on there is that you get taught all types of creative writing levels. For those who struggle with, let's say, their metaphors, you learn how to use metaphors, you learn how to use similes, you learn, you know, how to do what we call techniques with your poetry and things like that, and hone your writing skills.
Oh my
so
God.
we teach a number of things like that, and we get them different subjects and topics, and everybody creates their own poetry, and we go from there on critiquing or showing how it could, you know, I don't like to say better, but showing how to strengthen their poem. Correct.
Oh my God, I could like jump out of my seat. That is so cool. And especially I have always had that love for English. My mom's an English teacher. To this day, she's been in Metro about 25 years. And I work for Metro National Public Schools too. And I've always been a bookworm. So I've never tried to write. I always felt kind of more towards music, but I just had like the hugest respect and admiration for those who could. And when I see spaces like this, especially events like these, I've heard of events like this, but they are not often run or hosted by people of color or women. It's not inclusive. And I think this space, what you're doing, you're breaking down barriers, especially here in Nashville, because spaces like that are tight. They are tight to get into, and they're not often Black.
That was one of the things that I wanted to start, because I hadn't seen anyone doing anything like that. And because when COVID hit, it shut down and everybody went to social media. And it gave even the smallest of people bigger voices, but behind social media. So now that the world has opened back up, some people are still stuck behind just social media. And so I get to see a lot of poets and a lot of young ones that look like me, but we're just meeting online. So this was a way for me to start something like, you know, what a better way than to have a retreat. I get to meet people from all over the world, and we can fellowship. And one of the things that I like to do at the retreat is I have a dress-up night. Like Saturday night is usually, the last one, it was all Black, and I did a gala-type dress, formal. So for this one to be all white, and it's a formal, and I call it a meeting of the minds. So therefore, it'll be us and supporters and the poets alike. And we just get together and talk about what's needed in our communities, how we can support each other, you know, what's missing in the culture.
A real good thing.
Yes.
And Epifany, I just want to thank you. I can't thank you enough for sharing all of this and for what you're doing for the community, especially for youth who need that outlet, that safe outlet. Thank you. And oh my God, everything is Epifany's Emagination. And that's your website, your social media, and I will make sure that our viewers stay in touch with you. And to my viewers, thank you for allowing me this space, and thank you for allowing me to just share one more perspective that shapes our community. Thank you and good morning.